The mood was tense and quiet, and I, for one, was lost in dark thoughts. Suddenly, the second mate's whistle broke the silence, followed by his voice calling for someone to take the wheel. Quoin, standing at the door, said, "Plumber should hurry." Plumber asked the time, guessing it was near 4 bells, and wondered whose turn it was. As I walked to the poop, I saw Tammy pacing nervously. Surprised, I asked who was at the wheel, and he shakily replied that the second mate was. He added that he'd explain everything later. I approached the wheel, and the second mate confirmed who I was, gave me the course, and walked off without another word. I heard him talking to Tammy but couldn't make out what was said. It struck me as very strange. If Tammy had just been steering badly, the second mate wouldn't have taken over himself. Clearly, something odd had happened. The second mate then walked silently along the deck, even peering under the wheelbox once, but never spoke to me. Later, Tammy hurried back to me, visibly shaken, and said he'd seen it again. I asked what he meant, and he whispered that the thing had come over the lee rail, rising from the sea. I was stunned, and though I tried to say something rational, he stopped me, desperate and near breaking point. "Don't pretend, Jessup," he begged. "I need someone to talk to, or I'll go mad." I realized I had known deep down all along, which is why I had been avoiding him. I told him to go ahead and talk, but warned him to watch out for the second mate. He looked around cautiously, and I urged him again, asking why the second mate had taken the wheel and sent him away. "He didn't send me away," Tammy said, turning to me. "I ran off on my own. I asked why, and he said he'd explain everything." He reminded me that the second mate had sent him to the wheel earlier, and once there, he was struggling with thoughts of Williams, trying to stay focused. Then, suddenly, he looked to leeward and saw it climbing over the rail. Terrified and frozen, he abandoned the wheel and ran forward, screaming. The second mate grabbed and shook him, but he couldn't speak, only point. The second mate asked where, but when they looked, it was gone. Tammy wasn't sure if the mate had seen it. The second told him to stop acting like a fool and return to the wheel, but Tammy refused. That's when he blew his whistle and took the wheel himself. I asked if it might have just been his fear over Williams messing with his mind. But he was hurt by the suggestion. He reminded me of the others who'd seen things, Williams, Tom, even the second mate. He begged me not to dismiss it like before, saying he was going mad, needing someone to take him seriously. I realized I'd avoided telling him what I'd seen for fear of ridicule, and I admitted I needed someone to talk to just as much. He asked if these things were real, and I told him I didn't know, not in the way we usually think of reality. I then revealed I'd seen a strange figure on the main deck nights ago. He asked if I'd seen the thing he saw now, and I said yes. Tammy reproached me for pretending I hadn't. It had made him question his sanity. I explained that I'd hoped to make him believe it was his imagination. He appreciated the intention, but said it hadn't helped. We both wondered about Williams. Had he seen something before he fell? I admitted it might have just been an accident, but I wasn't sure. Tammy asked about the payday Williams mentioned and whether he was speaking to someone. I told him Williams had insisted on staying with the ship to get his payday even when others left. Tammy suddenly asked if those men had seen something and fled the ship. It was possible. It was possible. We had only joined her in San Francisco after all. He said it was terrible. We'd never be able to ask Williams what he knew. Then he asked if anything strange ever happened during the mate's watch. I said yes, others had mentioned strange things, but the mate just cursed the crew and ignored it. Still, Tammy noted, the worst events seemed to happen during our watch. I agreed. We had no proof. He simply shook his head and said quietly, "I'll always be afraid to go aloft now." "Nonsense," I told Tammy. "It might have just been an accident." But he replied, "Don't say that. You know you don't believe it. I stayed quiet because, honestly, he was right. We were silent for a bit until he asked, "Is the ship haunted?" I hesitated, then said, "No, not in the usual sense." He asked what I meant, and I told him I had a theory, one that sometimes seemed smart and other times completely mad. Still, it was the only thing that seemed to explain all the awful things that had happened. He urged me to go on. I said I didn't think anything on the ship itself wanted to harm us, but maybe the ship herself was the cause. He didn't get it at first and thought I was saying the ship was haunted. I told him to wait and listen. I reminded him the thing he saw came over the lee rail onto the poop deck. He agreed. I told him the one I saw had come out of the sea and gone back into it. That got his attention. Then I explained that maybe this ship can be boarded by things. I didn't know what exactly, but they looked like men. Still, who knows what's in the sea? I wasn't claiming they were ghosts or spirits, but I also couldn't say they were flesh and blood. Tammy interrupted, saying they couldn't be real people. They'd drown, and he thought he could see through the first one. Plus, the second mate hadn't seen the last one. I replied that even ghosts are impossible when we're thinking rationally. I wasn't claiming either answer yet. Tammy then asked where they came from, and I said, "Out of the sea, you saw it yourself." He asked why other ships didn't have such things. I told him my idea might explain that. Maybe most ships are protected by some natural barrier between the physical and the unknown, but maybe our ship's barrier had broken down. If that's true, she might now be exposed to attacks from things that exist in another reality. Tammy, clearly shaken, asked, "What's made her like that?" "The Lord knows," I answered. "Perhaps something to do with magnetic stresses, but you'd not understand, and I don't really. And, I suppose, inside of me, I don't believe it's anything of the kind. For a minute. I'm not built that way, and yet I don't know. Perhaps there may have been some rotten thing done aboard of her. Or, again, there's spirits?" he questioned. "I don't know," I said. "It's so hard to say what I really think, you know. I've got a queer idea that my headpiece likes to think good, but I don't believe my tummy believes it." "Go on," he said. "Well," I said, "suppose the Earth were inhabited by two kinds of life. We're one, and they're the other." "Go on," he said. "Well," I said, "don't you see, in a normal state we may not be capable of appreciating the realness of the other, but they may be just as real and material to them as we are to us. Do you see?" "Yes," he said. "Go on." "Well," I said, "the Earth may be just as real to them as to us. I mean that it may have qualities as material to them as it has to us, but neither of us could appreciate the other's realness, or the quality of realness in the Earth, which was real to the other. It's so difficult to explain. Don't you understand?" "Yes," he said. "Go on." "Well, if we were in what I might call a healthy atmosphere, they would be quite beyond our power to see or feel or anything. And the same with them. But the more we're like this, the more real and actual they could grow to us. See? That is, the more we should become able to appreciate their form of materialness. Yeah, that's all. I can't make it any clearer. Then, after all, you really think they're ghosts?" "Or something of that sort," Tammy said. "I suppose it does come to that," I answered. "I mean that, anyway. I don't think they're our ideas of flesh and blood. But, of course, it's silly to say much, and, after all, you must remember that I may be all wrong. I think you ought to tell the second mate all this. If it's really as you say, the ship ought to be put into the nearest port, and jolly well burnt." "The second mate couldn't do anything," I replied. "But if you could get him to believe it, he might explain the whole business to the skipper, and then something might be done. It's not safe as it is." "No," said Tammy. Not after what's happened tonight. Just then, the second mate came back up to the deck, and Tammy quickly moved away from the wheelbox. I was left standing there with a troubling sense that I should be doing something, though I didn't know exactly what.